This morning I was reading articles, and one of the articles came up about cities that have resolved their homeless issue and others that have resolved issues related to veterans. Many of those who were homeless, but just as importantly, those that were just kind of left behind after everything settled in the process of them coming back. And as a believer, I often talk about what does it look like if we have heaven here on earth. And it brought me to this place. It brought me to this place where I thought about, what do I resist that may well be God? And I don't mean this in a sarcastic or a debative, manner, but am I in the process of resisting something that God has for me because I don't agree with it philosophically, or it doesn't match up with my politics, or it doesn't light my fire? I thought about this morning, that all too often people resist some of the things they don't understand, but even the ones they do understand. In the last few weeks, I've been around a couple of people, and it's almost like the idea of being in resistance is more powerful than the ability to be humble and be in submission to what God has, and not just to what God has. I don't want you to think this is just a God message. But what about the community? What about the best needs of the community? As someone who was an addict himself, I look at the needs of people who are addicted to all kinds of chemicals and drugs and things like that. I look at people that are even addicted to their own sickness, that they live so fearfully that their sickness drives them not to plug into even medical response that might be helpful to them. But even in the church fellowship thought process, people who resist what God's trying to do when it comes to healing. Many years ago, I met with a woman, and we prayed for her, and she was healed, and her doctor said that she was healed. But then she became fearful about her income stream. And without getting into a debate about where that income stream came from, about a month and a half later, anger and bitterness came over her, and the next thing you knew, she was back in a wheelchair. That's a resistance factor. It's not because people necessarily go out of their way to be in the process of resistance, but sometimes it's hard to accept what we're fearful of. And, we can say it a million times that courage is not the absence of fear, but it's the overcoming of those fears. Bible tells us that perfect love casts out fear. It tells us that we have not the spirit of fear, but that of power, of sound mind, and of love. And yet in the midst of all these things, we see resistance. For many years, and even today, much of my thought process is conservative in its standing. And yet there's things that I think are related to social injustice. Now, I don't want to make social justice a religion, though it does look like many people want to make it that. But I think that it's about a community coming together in diversity and becoming unified through that diversity, and recognizing that at the end of the day, though, if we don't all put our oars in the water and paddle in the same direction, we're probably not going to get to that place that we all desire, which honestly, for me, is that everybody's needs would be met. That when the water rises, all the boats would float. So I think about this a lot. And so I'm thinking about, how do I help others not to resist the process that's going to bring us to a better place? Whether it's in my church fellowship that I lead, or it's in my community where I'm a businessman, or it's in the process of Positive News for You, my company. People look at Positive News for You and they go, oh, that's really great, until they run up against an article that they don't agree with. Taking care of the homeless. We can say we want to take care of the homeless, but too often our process of taking care of the homeless is throwing money at it and keeping them isolated, but not really taking care of them. And I don't mean that in a derogatory manner. I live in a community where I feel they're fairly well taken care of. And I fully understand the ramifications of many homeless people, because I've been around them and they've slept on my couch from time to time. And I know that there's a resistance to be around people, and I get that. But at the end of the day, my hope in my heart is that we can all communicate together and work together and come to a place where our own communities rise up and become, bright stars in the middle of our state, in the middle of our regions, and hopefully across our country and across the world. So that's just one of my rambling thoughts of the day. Not to be a resistor, to believe that all people are good and good things can come from those things. And, even as I read about the tragedy in Christ Church and, overseas, I sit there and think, I hate those things. God, I hate those things. I hate for people to die. I hate for the terrorism. I hate for all those things. And I know good things can come out of that. But between here and there, we have communities that are broken. And it's up to us to figure out how to reach those communities and do good in those things. So, again, my rambling thought of the day.